welcome back to Cuckoo for Books. My name is Salva and I am back with another reading update for you guys, this time for the second quarter of 2021. This is Everything I Read in 2021, Part 2. I've decided to divide up everything I read into 3 different categories: the yays, the nays, and the mess. First things first, getting the books that you might be familiar with out of the way. These are the books that I read for the StanAsianAuthors Readathon, and I did a wrap-up and mini review of it in my last video. Those 3 books are Parachutes by Kelly Yang, 1,000 Beginnings and Endings, which is a collection of Asian mythology retelling, so this is an anthology series. Book, not a series, it's a singular book, and One Night at the Penthouse Suite by Bianca Mori. If you are curious about any of those 3 books, then you can watch the video I did last time and I'll leave it up top. I also felt like because it was officially summer and that's why I got a lot of these reads done, I thought I could, you know, kind of indulge in a little rereading. I continued my Tamora Pierce rereadathon that I've been doing for the last year because I always forget to get back on it. This time I started on the second series in her Tortal universe, which is the Immortals Quartet. I started with Wild Magic. Let's try that again, shall we? I started with Wild Magic, which is the first book of Dane's series. Unlike the first series in the Tortal universe, which is the Song of the Lighthouse Quartet, the Immortals Quartet is a lot more nature-based. Instead of using the magic system to further a kingdom's political agenda, it's used more to get in touch with the characters' inner selves, in touch with Earth, with the animals. It is called Wild Magic, and there are animals on every cover of the series for a reason. One of these days, I'm just gonna give you guys like a video that's all about a primer for Tamora Pierce's Tortal universe. One day, I keep telling myself one day I'm gonna make one. Moving on, I also read Crazy Rich Asians and China Rich Girlfriend. I needed a light read. I just needed to cheer up. Now let's get to the yays, the nays, and the mess. So for this quarter, I read 2 arcs that were sent to me by Penguin Random House, and incidentally, one of them falls on the nay side and one of them falls on the yay side. Starting off with the nay side, I read A Special Place for Women by Laura Hankin, and this one just had so much potential and just kept disappointing me chapter after chapter, unfortunately. The premise was there's this secret exclusive club for women in New York City, and they seem to be behind the scenes in almost every huge political, pop culture, mainstream media event, and our story follows an undercover journalist who decides to infiltrate that club and figure out what the heck is going on. I just was so disappointed. First of all, the main character is so unlikable. Right from the off, she admits to being in love with her very married, very committed boss. They already messed up once, like they shared a kiss. She sort of, you know, established, oh, we shouldn't have done that. Then she falls out of a job and then she kind of like weasels her way back into his good graces, even though she knows they'd be crossing a line again, but she's like, haha, but I need a job. She has his best friend, this guy who she says she loves more than anything, but then she makes him do things that are uncomfortable, and then she like forces him to go along with her with this whole fake dating scheme so that she can be accepted by this exclusive women's club. Spoiler alert, she gets into the club because where would this story go if she didn't get into the club? She befriends this really pure-hearted, good character who just really legitimately wants to make a difference in the world, and that's why she's joined this exclusive women's club, and she's just so happy and optimistic about everything. The main character like tries to be her friend because she's like, oh, I need to get close with the people in this club, but like deep down she keeps like judging everything this happy-go-lucky person does just because what, she's overtly happy. All of that aside, I might have been okay with her being an awful person if not for the main plot twist of the story. You're wondering, right, like just how far did the roots of this club go? Like what are they controlling? What is going on? What do they have on all these people? To quote Taylor Swift, I can't even say this with a straight face. The answer is that they are witches. And that's it. That is what the entire book is building up towards. And I just feel like revealing that they were witches just undermined the entire point of the story, because the point of the story was to show that yes, there are these female power players behind every major event in America going on. And to reveal like, just kidding, they were witches and that's how they did it, I feel like it's such a slap in the face. So you're saying women wouldn't be able to affect that kind of change without magic? Is that what the author is trying to say? I would have loved it if it had been undercover journalist in a political thriller. That would have been so fascinating, and to cop out and say, we dance in the moonlight at midnight in the woods because we're witches. And I was like, oh no. Literally when that reveal happened, I lost all drive to finish the book, but finish it I did, and it was just so disappointing. The second nay book I have would be Beyond the Ruby Veil by Mara Fitzgerald. This is set in a fantasy world, kind of, I think the kingdom is, or the city rather, is inspired a little bit by Italy, and our heroine Emanuela is about to get married to her childhood best friend. She and her childhood best friend are both gay, but that doesn't matter to her because all she wants is the power behind her childhood best friend's last name. So she's kind of doing like an arranged marriage for the sake of political power. But in this world also, once you receive a mark on your skin, you immediately must surrender yourself to this monster or creature called the Water Kreia, and there she will turn your blood into water because water is very, very scarce in this city. And Emanuela discovers that she's received such an omen, and because she is stubborn, she refuses to turn herself over to the Water Kreia and instead kills the Water Kreia. And now she has to go on a journey to figure out how the heck she's gonna bring water back to her city. Now, did everything I say sound like a spoiler? It's not, and it is. It's not because everything is in the summary, but it is also a spoiler because like everything I just said took up the entire probably first third of the book. So the entire first third of the book, I was sitting there being like, why did you put everything on the dust jacket? I know a third of the story now. Thanks. The heroine was unlikable. I get that the author was trying to make her into an anti-hero or for you to question who the hero was, who the villain was. I do like how she's unapologetic, how she wants what she wants and she refuses to give in. And that was good at the beginning. But there's a point in the book where the world is figuratively crashing down all around her and she still refuses to adjust. And it's like, no, I get it. You have a strong personality. Good for you. But you gotta learn how to compromise, dude. And there were so many convenient situations in the book where it's like, they just happened to be under the window and happened to eavesdrop on the exact piece of information that they needed to move the plot forward. It was one of my most anticipated reads and it just like really, really fell flat for me. The last nay book that I have would, I think half the people might be like, well, finally. But then the other half might be like, but I liked it because such is the divisive nature of this author. My last nay book would be Chain of Iron by Cassandra Clare. It's set in the early 20th century and it's set in England with Tamora Pierce, Leigh Bardugo, and even lasting this long with the Shadowhunter Chronicles. I'm never one to be like, stop writing books in this universe. I'm like, keep it coming. I don't mind. I am always a fan of that. And this book finally made me mind. And I was like, oof, I think we perchance might be running out of ideas here. I really don't know where we're gonna go. There are so many parts of the book that were rehashed from previous series, and for me I think the biggest risk of this book was every time Cassandra Clare has come out with a new Shadowhunter series, it's always been either before every other series that happened or after every other series that happened. And this is the first time she's come up with a series sandwiched between two other series. And because of that, you can't help but feel like it's a little fatalistic maybe. Because in my mind, at the end of the day, I was like, it can't be that bad, right? Like whatever's gonna happen to this world, it can't be that bad because she has two more series set in the same universe taking place after this book. So they saved the world. Obviously, the danger they're in can't be that dangerous because they all come back for the sequels. The next batch of books were not necessarily good, not necessarily bad. They were just meh. The first book on my meh pile would be Hugo Vickers' Alice, Princess Andrew of Greece, and this is a nonfiction. It is a biography of Princess Alice, who, if you may not know, is Prince Philip's mama. It's nonfiction. There isn't supposed to be a narrative, but there's still supposed to be a narrative, if you know what I mean. And this one really felt like reading a very long Wikipedia page where it was just like, on June 18, 1890, blah, blah, blah. She went here, checked in here, visited here, attended the wedding of this person and that person. And I get it, if you're a biographer, you're supposed to remain impartial for the most part. But I mean, you're still supposed to have an opinion, dude. Like, you can't just rattle off dates. When I hear people say that history is boring, it's books like this that they are probably referring to. The second meh book that I have, I really wanted to love, I really wanted to enjoy, because first of all, it had an amazing cover, but second, because it was a Greek mythology book, and I really do love Greek myth books, and it was Ariadne by Jennifer Shant. Ariadne is one of those characters in Greek mythology that is always the bridesmaid, never the bride, literally and figuratively. She's always a side character in someone else's story, and she is rarely given her own platform. I'm not sure, but this might be the first Greek mythology retelling that focuses solely on her. And then I read it, and then I understood why there's never been a retelling of her. If there is, it's usually in line with Theseus' story or Phaedra's story. In fact, halfway through the book, it's not all about Ariadne anymore. It's about Ariadne and Phaedra. Like, we don't get Ariadne's POV anymore. It shifts to Phaedra. And I love Greek myths, and I've always loved the character of Ariadne. I was so excited that she had her own story to tell, finally. And then it wasn't even her story, like 50% of the time. There were so many things that I feel like the author tapped into, and I was like, okay, let's explore that. She kind of does, and then never goes all the way. It feels like she dug and dug and dug, and then you keep waiting for her to strike it rich and to hit gold, and then before you know it, the book is done, and you're like, the book ends in the most abrupt of ways, and there was no foreshadowing, there was no hint that that's where the book would end. There were a couple of things that I really appreciated about this book. I love how it kind of kept the traditions of the Odyssey of like telling a story within a story, having characters actually tell them as storytellers to other characters. And there's this one quote at the beginning that I really truly genuinely love, and I'm just gonna pull it up right now. I had hit upon a truth of womanhood, however blameless a life we led, the passions and the greed of men could bring us to ruin, and there was nothing we could do. And like my favorite podcaster Liv from Let's Talk About Myths Baby always says, that is something that is so true in ancient Greece, and unfortunately it is also still true in today's society. For me, the best thing about this book was I was playing Assassin's Creed Odyssey at the same time. The geography in the video game and the geography in the book, I guess, were both really well researched because they would match. So what I would do was, like, if Ariadne arrived on Naxos, I would turn on my PS4 and then check out what Naxos looked like in Assassin's Creed, and to sort of have like a visual aid. So that's what I really enjoyed about reading this book, was kind of, I did it as a two-parter with a video game. Would highly recommend. The next meh book I have would be The Sacred Lies of Minnow Bly by Stephanie Oakes, and this is a cult book, one of my favorite subgenres. This is about a girl named Minnow Bly who was rescued from a cult that she'd lived in since she was 5, and an FBI agent makes a deal with her. Give us dirt on this cult and you won't go to jail. And that's what I was sold on this book. I thought, ooh, or we could have like a Criminal Minds type interrogation type book, or are we gonna go have her flash back to life in the cult? So it did do that FBI interrogation kind of thing. It did go into her time at the cult, and it did go into her life present day in juvie, and kind of became a commentary on juvenile delinquency and how the cycle just keeps on going in certain parts of America. But again, it was like, pick something. There was just not enough time to cover all 3 bases, and I really wish she could have picked one, because honestly, Stephanie Oakes' prose is lovely. I enjoyed her writing, and in the back when I read her biography, she finished with an MFA in poetry, and I was like, oh yes, I can totally see that. Her writing is beautiful, it's lovely, but narrative wise, it wasn't completely there for me. The last meh book I have would be Aurora Rising by Jay Kristoff and Amy Kaufman. This is their second sci-fi series. It wasn't a boring book, it was very entertaining. I think it skewed a little too young for my demographic, but then again, I am a 20-something who is reading YA, so that's on me. This one really felt like you fed Guardians of the Galaxy, Star Wars, another YA book, and then put it into like an AI machine and asked the AI machine to spit out a novel. It was so full of cliches and rehashed scenarios that you can see from like every other sci-fi book and movie out there, that after for me, what was the ingenuity of the Illuminae Files, their first series, I was just like, that's it? We've been waiting for your second sci-fi series for forever, and that's the best you can do? The cool thing about this is pink pages. That's the most I can say about it. That's positive. pink pages. Now we're here at the very end of this very, very long wrap-up, which is good and bad, because good, it means I read a lot this quarter, woo, but also bad because I'm very thirsty. So I have two books that I really, truly enjoyed. And the first book that I really loved would be Malice by Heather Walter. This is the other arc that I read for Penguin Random House. This is a Maleficent retelling. I loved it so much. The way she crafted the fantasy land, it was so right up my alley. The perfect blend of high fantasy and being a fairy tale retelling. You could tell it was written by someone who valued and cherished and knew fairy tales inside out. There were so many little homages to, you know, the fairy tale lore, and not only that, but to the actual art of storytelling when it comes to fairy tales. You know how fairy tales are told in a very specific way, and you can see that the author really paid attention to that when writing this book. For a villain origin story, you need to sell your readers on what is it that makes this person so bad, or what makes this person turn so evil. And just the gradual descent of the Maleficent in this book was so well executed. You feel everything. When she is happy, you feel happy. When she feels vindicated, so do you. When she's angry, when she's sad, you're there with her. I think it's just such a testament to the author's writing that you feel every emotion that this character feels. And I think it's something that's so important if you're telling such a familiar story, and a villain origin story at that. I think right now it's standing firm as like my favorite book of the year, but you know what's giving it a run for its money? The next book on this list. So the last book for this wrap-up, it is the sequel to The Royal We, and it is The Heir Affair by Heather Cox and Jessica Morgan. The Royal We is basically really, really well written William and Kate fanfiction, and this is part 2 of their story when, well, you can guess what goes on, right? After Happily Ever After. I don't want to say anything about this right now other than I flippin' loved it, because I want to save it for a book review, a proper book review, because I can just guess that this video has gone on for way too long already as it is. So I'm gonna save it for a book review. That way the Royal We and the Heir Affair can both have their own separate book review on my channel. That was a race against my camera's battery life and my potential dehydration. I'm going to go get a drink of water now lest I become well and truly parched. But that about does it for my second quarter wrap-up of everything I read in 2021. You can follow me on my other bookish adventures on Twitter and Instagram. I'm both at Cuckoo for Books. Please subscribe, and I will see you guys very soon. Bye guys!